My next guest is a renowned legal scholar, a fabled human and civil rights activist, and one of the most prominent defenders of Israel. I'm delighted to welcome Professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor, thank you for being with us here on Opinionated.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having Senator Fetterman, because he, along with two other and several other non-Jewish senators, Senator Cruz, Senator Graham, have been the most important defenders of Israel in the Senate, much more than the Jewish senators like Senator Schumer and Senator Cohen and some of the other senators. I stand strongly with Senator Fetterman, so thank you for having him.
Thank you. On that question, do you think that Senator Fetterman, given all that we talked about in the earlier segment, namely the lack of moral rectitude that we're seeing in that party, do you think he's going to be able to remain in that party, or do you think that he's going to have to make a choice such as the one that you made to leave the party?
Well, he's an elected senator. I'm just an ordinary guy. And so I have the freedom to decide who to vote for. I'm now an independent. I think he'll remain a senator. There have been some switches and some people who have left the Democratic Party, and I understand that, because if the Democratic Party becomes the party of socialism and the party of anti-Israelism, there are a great many Democrats, not only Jews, but many Christians and even some Muslims, who will leave the Democratic Party and either become independent or become Republicans.
And yet there is a very real problem, a rapid rise of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism that's taking place on the other side of the political aisle. We're seeing many voices, many influencers who are speaking to the detriment of Israel against the Israel-US alliance. It's very concerning. The volume is ratcheting up. How would you advise people to approach this two-pronged assault, I would say, on the Jewish people?
Well, it's not so much that there's a divide between the Democrats and the Republicans. The Republicans are still much more strongly pro-Israel. It's a divide along generational lines. More young people are against Israel, including young people in the Republican Party. And they just believe some of the rhetoric that's coming from the Tucker Carlsons and the other blatant anti-Semites of the right. It's partly a function of education. I think we're seeing a failure of higher education. Schools like Harvard and Yale and Columbia are failing to educate their students. They're allowing left-wing professors to propagandize students in the false name of academic freedom. Academic freedom doesn't allow a professor at Columbia to say to a Jewish student, oh, if you're Israeli, I'm not going to let you speak in my class unless you admit you're a criminal. That's not academic freedom. And
absolutely. I agree with you, Professor. And I want to turn now to another subject, if I may. You have always been someone who is swift to condemn, of course, anybody who participates in terror attacks against, frankly, anyone who participates in the October 7th terror attack. Of course, you didn't hesitate for a moment to come out swinging there. But there's now talk about the day after. I wonder how you reconcile the ongoing antipathy, enmity, and violent opposition towards Israelis and Jews by the Palestinian Arabs with the notion of a two-state solution. Where should we see any pathway towards that resolution? Incidentally, to tip my hand, I would call it a two-state delusion.
Well, I think the two-state solution is dead for the moment. I think you can't have a two-state solution if you have a majority of Muslims and Palestinians in Gaza supporting Hamas. And if there were an election today, even on the West Bank, I think Hamas would get overwhelming support. So the two-state solution has been killed by Palestinians who don't believe really in two states, but believe in ridding themselves of the Israeli state and proclaiming one Palestinian state, a terrorist state, from the river to the sea. So there's no possibility of a two-state solution now. My hope and my dream, the way Herzl's dreamed of a Zionist state, is that perhaps someday the good people of Palestine, and there are many, many good Palestinians, particularly on the West Bank, but some in Gaza as well, very, very small minority, would get together and understand that their benefit would be in having a peace with an Israeli state living side by side. But until that occurs, and until the leadership of the Palestinian Authority gives up its nightmare of trying to destroy Israel, there can be no state solution.
Don't you think that we might be guilty of Professor, don't you think we might be guilty of peddling the soft bigotry of low expectations when we put all of the ills within Palestinian society squarely and exclusively at the feet of the Palestinian leadership? I mean, the Palestinian Arabs, if given the opportunity, as you've just said, would vote overwhelmingly for Hamas. Now, they would do so in Gaza, and they would do so also in Judea and Samaria. It's absurd to think that they know not what they vote for. They cannot have been surprised when they voted for a genocidal leadership in Gaza, and then that leadership proceeded to launch an attempted genocide against Israel. Surely we should be giving them some agency.
Of course, there's no doubt about that. But so did the German people and the Japanese people have some agency in the Second World War. And then when their leadership changed over time, Japan and Germany became peaceful countries and supported the United States. I still have the hope that someday wise Palestinian people will understand that they benefit enormously from an alliance with Israel, the way I think many Saudis and Jordanians and others in the Gulf have come slowly to realize that an alliance with Israel is far better for them than turning Israel into an enemy. And the reason for that is that Israel's so strong. Look, we remember the psalmist who said, Hashem oz li amo yitain, Hashem yivarech amo b'shalom. We'll get peace only through strength. And the only reason that there is any peace in the Middle East right now is because of Israel's strength. Its strength in destroying Iran's nuclear capacity with the help of the United States. Its help in destroying Hezbollah. Its help in destroying Hamas. As long as Israel remains the most powerful military in the Middle East, we will find more and more Arabs coming to see that they benefit from having some degree of peace. Now, whether that peace takes the form of a two-state solution or some...
Professor, let me ask you something else, if I may. After the massacre on October the 7th, Palestinian Arabs from Gaza came into the very towns and villages that had been massacred by Hamas, which, again, you, of course, condemned swiftly and unequivocally. And they didn't proceed to administer first aid to our injured or our dying or those who were bleeding out, but rather they proceeded to loot and to pillage those towns and those villages. That doesn't, to me, seem like a people that is an ideal grouping for a partnership with. In actual fact, I think that those people should be kept well away from our borders and actually disqualified from statehood. What would you say to that?
Well, I agree with you that, of course, people who participated or even supported are disqualified from being part of any two-state solution. In fact, they ought to be prosecuted. I shed no tears for civilians, so-called civilians, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds who are called children, 18-year-olds, women. I shed no tears for any of them who were killed as human shields or part of Israel's defense. What I do shed tears for are, babies and children and the elderly who didn't support the October 7th. There are some of those, not enough, and some of those on the West Bank as well. I don't think you can generalize about a population, but I think that you can. I think Israel made one serious mistake, and I know people disagree with me. I don't think Israel should have declared war on Hamas. It should have declared war on the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip proclaims itself to be a political entity. And just like the United States didn't declare war on Nazis, they declared war on Germany, they should have declared war on the Gaza Strip. And
well, Professor, just because of our time, I can tell you as a veteran of this war who served in the Gaza Strip knows very, very well that war was waged against it. And thankfully, as a result, at least in part of that, our hostages came home. Professor Alan Dershowitz, I just want to thank you so very much for joining me. Thank you for all that you do. And I look forward to hosting you again here on Opinionated. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.